Professor Velkram adjusted his six-layered protective suit for the third time that morning, his four eyes scanning the lecture hall with barely concealed terror. The Galactic University of Advanced Sciences had seen many controversial decisions in its 12,000-year history, but allowing a human student into their prestigious xenobiology program, that was either brilliance or absolute madness. His teaching assistant, a gentle Aquarian named Blue Nessa, rippled her translucent skin in what passed for a reassuring gesture among her people. "Professor, the human has been here for 3 weeks without incident. Perhaps our fears are somewhat exaggerated?" Velkram's laugh came out as a harsh, chittering sound. "Without incident? Did you not hear about the cafeteria situation?" She opened a food container with her bare hands. No tools, no mechanical assistance, just twisted the metal cap off like it was made of soft clay. "The maintenance crew is still in therapy." The morning sun filtered through the bioluminescent windows of Lecture Hall 7, casting an ethereal glow over the assembled students. 43 of the galaxy's most promising young minds sat in carefully arranged safety pods, each designed to protect their particular species from the harsh realities of academic life. The crystalloids sat in temperature-controlled chambers, the gas swimmers floated in their atmospheric bubbles, and the gravity sensitives reclined in their null-field cocoons. And then there was Maya Chen. She sat in a standard chair. No environmental controls, no protective barriers, no life support systems. Just a 20-year-old human girl from Earth casually reading a datapad while eating what appeared to be a chemical weapon disguised as breakfast. Is that a spice blend on her nutrition cube?" Velkram's voice cracked as he watched her sprinkle red powder onto her food. "I believe humans call it hot sauce, Professor," Blue Nessa whispered back. "The chemical analysis indicates it contains capsaicin levels that would be lethal to most species. And she's putting it on her food for enjoyment?" "Apparently so." Velkram steadied himself against his lecture podium, a marvel of Zentorian engineering designed to withstand seismic events and armed conflicts. Today, he suspected, it might actually need those specifications. "Good morning, class," he began, his voice amplified through the hall's universal translation system. "Today we will be discussing the theoretical limits of biological adaptation in extreme environments." Maya looked up from her breakfast weapon, her brown eyes bright with interest. Those eyes. Velkram shuddered. He'd researched human ocular capabilities extensively. They could track fast-moving objects, function in variable light conditions, and apparently convey emotions with a precision that most species required complex pheromone releases to achieve. "Now," the professor continued, activating his holographic display, "when we examine worlds classified as hostile to life, we typically see environmental factors such as extreme temperatures, toxic atmospheres, or dangerous fauna that make long-term habitation impossible for most species." A methane breather raised one of its sensor stalks. "Professor, what about the theoretical upper limits? Surely no world could be so hostile that it would actively strengthen its inhabitants?" Velkram's mandibles twitched. "Oh, if only this student knew." "An excellent question," hissed Nex. "The conventional wisdom suggests that extremely hostile environments would simply eliminate life rather than strengthen it." However, he paused, glancing at Maya, who was now somehow consuming her chemical weapon breakfast while simultaneously taking notes. "Recent developments have forced us to reconsider these assumptions." Maya raised her hand. Her unprotected, unaugmented, impossibly fragile-looking hand. "Yes, Miss Singh?" "Professor, I was reading about the classification system last night," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the hall without any mechanical amplification. "I noticed that Earth is listed as a Class CI Deathworld, but I'm curious about the specific criteria. What makes a world earn that classification?" The lecture hall fell silent. Even the gas swimmers stopped their constant filtering motion. Velkram's four eyes blinked in rapid succession. "Well, Miss Singh, the Class ECI designation is reserved for worlds that exhibit multiple simultaneous lethal characteristics. For instance, your planet experiences regular seismic activity that would demolish most civilizations. You mean earthquakes? Maya asked, tilting her head slightly. Yeah, those can be pretty inconvenient. Inconvenient, Vex Kazan repeated faintly. Then there's the atmospheric composition, he continued, consulting his notes. Earth's atmosphere contains 21% oxygen, which is highly corrosive and would cause rapid cellular degradation in most species. Oh, right. The oxygen thing, Maya nodded. I heard that's why some aliens need special breathing equipment here. Must be rough. Your planet also experiences regular weather phenomena that would qualify as natural disasters on most civilized worlds. The professor pressed on, his voice rising slightly. Hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards, floods, weather, Maya said with a shrug. Yeah, it keeps things interesting. A student from the Crystal Formation pods spoke up, their voice resonating like wind chimes. But surely the dangerous fauna must pose a significant threat to human populations? Maya laughed. The sound was bright and completely unfiltered by fear response suppressors or anxiety modulators. Dangerous fauna? What, like bears? Your planet contains carnivorous megafauna weighing up to 800 kilograms, Vex Kazan said, his voice gaining a slightly hysterical edge. Venomous reptiles, aggressive arthropods, predatory marine life with bite forces exceeding 15,000 pounds per square inch. Oh, sharks, Maya said thoughtfully. Yeah, they're pretty cool. My little brother Jake went diving with some last summer. Got some amazing pictures. The professor's suit made a soft beeping sound, indicating his stress levels were approaching critical thresholds. Your sibling voluntarily entered the water with apex predators for recreation. Well, yeah. Thrill-seeking runs in the family, I guess. Vex Kazan began to pace, his 6 legs carrying him in agitated circles around the lectern. Miss Singh, I feel compelled to point out that your species treats these existential threats as casual inconveniences. This is precisely why the Galactic Council initially voted against allowing human students in our institutions. Initially? Maya asked, raising an eyebrow. The vote was overruled when your planet's diplomatic corps demonstrated that humans could survive in standard galactic environments without life support. Blue Nessa interjected helpfully. How did they demonstrate that? Asked a student from the atmospheric control section. They sent an ambassador to the council chambers, Vex Kazan said, his voice dropping to a whisper. She stood in the central forum, breathing unfiltered station air, for 6 hours while delivering a speech about interspecies cooperation. That doesn't sound too impressive, Maya said. The Central Forum maintains an atmospheric composition designed to be barely tolerable to all member species simultaneously, the professor explained. It's essentially a cocktail of mild toxins and irritants. Most council members require full environmental suits for meetings longer than 30 minutes. Oh, Maya said. That's actually pretty thoughtful, making sure everyone's equally uncomfortable so no one has an advantage. Vex Kazan stopped pacing and stared at her. Miss Singh, the atmospheric mixture in that chamber would cause respiratory burns in most species within minutes. Huh, she said, taking another bite of her spiced breakfast. Humans are tougher than I thought. Tougher than you thought? The professor's voice cracked again. Miss Singh, your species literally evolved to chase prey across vast distances until the target died of exhaustion. Your persistence predators. Well, when you put it like that, it does sound kind of metal, Maya admitted. A gravity-sensitive student whispered, What does metal mean in this context? It means impressively hardcore, Maya explained cheerfully. Your planet's gravity is approximately 1.3 times galactic standard, Vex Kazan continued, his lecture taking on the tone of a man confessing his sins. Your atmospheric pressure would crush most spacefaring species. Your sun emits radiation levels that require shielding technology to survive. But we get such great tans, Maya said, grinning. Tans, Vex Kazan repeated numbly. You deliberately expose yourselves to mutagenic radiation for cosmetic purposes. Some people do. I personally prefer sunscreen. SPF 50 is usually enough, though my mom insists on SPF 75 for beach days. The professor's mandibles began clicking rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. Miss Singh's SPF ratings measure protection against radiation that would sterilize most known life forms. Really? I always thought it was just for preventing sunburn. Sunburn, he whispered. Radiation damage that you treat as a minor inconvenience. Maya looked around the lecture hall, noticing for the first time that every single alien student was staring at her with expressions ranging from awe to terror. Guys, you're making this sound way more dramatic than it is. Earth's just Earth. It's home, Miss Singh, said Hiss next, the methane breather. Could you perhaps demonstrate human physical capabilities for academic purposes? Sure, Maya said, standing up from her chair. Every student in the room immediately activated their emergency protocols. Environmental suits sealed, safety barriers engaged, and at least 3 different species began transmitting final messages to their families. Oh, come on, Maya laughed. I'm just standing up. Vex Kazan backed away from his podium, his 4 eyes fixed on her with the same attention a prey animal might give to an approaching predator. Miss Singh, perhaps we should start with something less dynamic. I'm literally just standing, she said, putting her hands on her hips. What did you want me to demonstrate? Well, the professor said carefully, perhaps you could show us how humans open sealed containers. I understand you have a unique approach to mechanical problem solving. Maya looked around and spotted a sealed specimen jar on the professor's desk. It was a standard galactic container, designed to be opened only with the proper electronic key or specialized tools. She walked over and picked it up. This? She asked, holding the jar. Yes, but please be careful. That container is designed to withstand significant force. Maya gripped the lid and twisted. The seal that was designed to resist 500 standard pressure units gave way with a soft pop. The lecture hall erupted in chittering, bubbling, and various other species-specific sounds of amazement. How? Demanded a crystalloid student. The molecular bonds in that sealant require specific resonance frequencies to break. I just twisted it, Maya said, holding up the now open jar, like opening a pickle jar at home. Vex Kazan's breathing apparatus was working overtime. Miss Singh, could you perhaps demonstrate your species' famous durability? Nothing extreme, of course. What did you have in mind? The professor hesitated, then picked up a standard educator's pointer from his desk. It was made of compressed titanium steel, designed to last for centuries of academic use. Perhaps you could bend this? Maya took the pointer and examined it. Are you sure? This looks pretty expensive. We have others, he said faintly. She gripped the pointer in both hands and applied gentle pressure. The steel rod, designed to withstand the rigors of academic life across dozens of worlds, bent into a neat 90-degree angle. Like that? She asked. The silence in the lecture hall was broken only by the soft hiss of emergency life support systems activating throughout the room. Miss Singh, Vex Kazan said, his voice barely above a whisper, you just bent compressed titanium steel with your bare hands. Did I break it? I can probably bend it back. No. Several students shouted simultaneously. Maya looked around the room again, finally beginning to understand the effect she was having. Okay, I'm starting to get the impression that humans might be a little different than I thought. A little different, Vex Kazan repeated, looking at the bent steel in her hands. Miss Singh, your species is essentially a collection of walking natural disasters who somehow learned to build spaceships. That's a bit harsh, don't you think? Before the professor could respond, his personal communicator chimed with an emergency signal. He glanced at the display and his 4 eyes went wide. Class dismissed, he said quickly. Everyone return to your habitat pods immediately. What's wrong? Maya asked, still holding the bent pointer. The message is from station security, Vex Kazan said, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. Apparently, someone reported a catastrophic structural failure demonstration in Lecture Hall 7. Maya looked down at the bent steel in her hands. Oh. Oops. The professor began gathering his materials with the desperate efficiency of someone fleeing a natural disaster. Miss Singh, I believe we need to have a serious discussion about human strength parameters and their effects on standard galactic infrastructure. Is this going to be on the exam? She asked hopefully. Vex Kazan paused in his frantic packing and stared at her. Then, despite everything, he began to laugh. It was a high, chittering sound that spoke of hysteria and the collapse of long-held scientific assumptions. Miss Singh, he said, his voice shaking with suppressed mirth, I suspect you're going to revolutionize our entire understanding of xenobiology. Cool, Maya said, carefully setting down the bent pointer. Does this mean I get extra credit? As the lecture hall emptied around them, with students fleeing to the safety of their environmental pods, Professor Vex Kazan found himself facing a terrible realization that they were going to need bigger safety protocols. The next morning brought what Professor Vex Kazan would later describe in his incident report as the most terrifying 47 minutes of my academic career. The emergency faculty meeting had been called after station security's preliminary assessment of the structural integrity demonstration from the previous day. Dean Korvoth, a massive gorilloid whose species had evolved on a high-gravity world, sat at the head of the conference table looking distinctly uncomfortable. His usual air of unshakable authority had been replaced by the nervous energy of someone who'd just discovered that their supposedly secure facility was actually made of tissue, paper, and wishful thinking. Colleagues, the dean began, his deep voice rumbling through the translation system. We have a situation that requires immediate attention. Our human student has been exceeding expectations. Exceeding expectations? Dr. Zimplex, the head of xenobiology, let out a sound like steam escaping from a pressure valve. She bent a titanium steel rod with her bare hands. Our entire laboratory equipment budget is based on the assumption that students can't casually destroy our instruments. Maya Singh sat in the corner of the conference room, looking supremely uncomfortable as 24 alien faculty members discussed her like she was a particularly dangerous laboratory specimen. She'd been asked to attend the meeting for consultation purposes, though it was becoming increasingly clear that she was really there so they could keep an eye on her. I really am sorry about the pointer, she said for the 15th time. I didn't realize it was that strong. On Earth we have rulers that are way sturdier than that. The collective intake of breath from the assembled faculty created a small atmospheric disturbance in the room. Rulers? Professor Vex Kazan's voice cracked. Your educational implements are stronger than compressed titanium steel? Well, yeah, kids break stuff all the time, so school supplies have to be pretty tough. I once saw my friend Tommy snap a wooden ruler in half during a test, and the teacher just handed him a new one. Dr. Zimplex began frantically taking notes. And this, Tommy, was this considered unusual behavior among your species? Not really. He was just frustrated about the math problem. Humans do that sometimes when we're stressed. Dean Korvoth leaned forward, his massive form casting a shadow over the conference table. Miss Singh, when you say do that, what exactly do you mean? Maya shrugged, a gesture that somehow managed to be both casual and terrifying to the assembled aliens. You know, break stuff. Punch walls, throw things. Humans get physical when we're emotional. You punch walls? The dean's voice had dropped to a whisper. Sure. Though Mom always told us to punch pillows instead. Walls leave marks. And landlords get cranky about security deposits. Professor Vex Kazan was scribbling notes so frantically that his stylus was leaving scorch marks on his datapad. Miss Singh, could you clarify what you mean by marks in this context? Holes, mostly. Sometimes cracks. Jake put his fist through the drywall in our apartment last year when his girlfriend broke up with him. It took forever to patch. The silence that followed was broken only by the soft whirring of air filtration systems working overtime to process the sudden increase in stress pheromones flooding the room. Your sibling created a hole in a structural wall with his fist due to emotional distress? Dr. Zimplex's voice sounded like he was confirming the details of an impending apocalypse. It was just drywall, Maya said defensively, not like it was load-bearing or anything. Miss Singh, Dean Korvoth said carefully, Perhaps you could demonstrate the difference between human emotional responses and, say, recreational activities. I guess. What did you have in mind? The dean gestured to a reinforced demonstration table at the front of the room. Could you show us how a human might express mild frustration? Maya walked over to the table, which was constructed from the same compressed titanium steel as the previous day's pointer. She examined it thoughtfully, then gave it a light tap with her knuckles. The impact rang through the room like a bell, and a small dent appeared in the metal surface. That was mild frustration? Professor Velkram squeaked. Yeah, just a little tap. If I was actually frustrated, I'd probably, she trailed off, noticing the expressions of absolute terror on every face in the room. You know what? Maybe I shouldn't demonstrate that. Yes, let's not, the dean said quickly. Dr. Zimplex raised one of his sensor stalks. Miss Singh, you mentioned recreational activities. Could you perhaps describe human leisure pursuits? Sure. Humans do lots of fun stuff. Swimming, hiking, rock climbing, martial arts, extreme sports. Extreme sports? Professor Velkram's mandibles were clicking so rapidly they sounded like a percussion instrument. Yeah, like skydiving, bungee jumping, free climbing, base jumping, white water rafting. Maya was counting on her fingers. Oh, and there's stuff like parkour, mixed martial arts, and competitive eating. Competitive eating? Dr. Zimplex looked confused. You compete to consume nutrition? More like compete to consume as much food as possible in a set time limit. The current hot dog eating record is like 76 hot dogs in 10 minutes. 76. The dean's voice was faint. That's more than most species consume in a full rotation cycle. Joey Chestnut's pretty amazing, Maya said proudly, though I personally think the wing eating competitions are more impressive. Those things are usually pretty spicy. Spicy, Professor Velkram repeated. Like your breakfast yesterday. Oh, that was nothing. I was going easy since I didn't know if the ventilation system could handle real spice levels. The faculty members began exchanging worried glances. Real spice levels? Miss Singh. Dean Korvoth said slowly. What would you consider real spice levels? Maya brightened. Well, I brought some of my favorite hot sauce from home. Want to see? Before anyone could object, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small bottle with a label that seemed to be actively warning potential users about their impending doom. This is Carolina Reaper sauce, she said cheerfully. It's about 2.2 million Scoville units, great on pizza. Dr. Zimplex's sensor stalks began retracting into his shell. Miss Singh, our analysis of your previous meal indicated capsaicin levels that would qualify as chemical warfare agents under Galactic Convention 7. That was just regular hot sauce, Maya said, looking at the bottle in her hand. This stuff is about 50 times stronger. The air filtration systems began working audibly harder as various species started releasing emergency pheromones. Perhaps, Dean Korvoth said carefully, we should move on to discussing practical accommodations for your continued education here. That sounds great, Maya said, casually setting the bottle of liquid destruction on the table. Though I should mention that my roommate Lucy is transferring here next semester. Professor Velkram's 4 eyes went wide. Another human? Yep, she's majoring in engineering. Really excited to see what kind of projects she can work on with alien technology. The dean's face had taken on the expression of someone who'd just been told that the asteroid heading for their planet had friends. Engineering, he repeated weakly. Lucy's super creative. Maya continued enthusiastically. Back home, she built a trebuchet that could launch bowling balls over 300 yards, for fun. A trebuchet, Dr. Zimplex whispered. It's a siege weapon. For recreational purposes. She also does competitive strong woman stuff. And last year she deadlifted 405 pounds. Canayans, itches Pappelpatin. 405 pounds, Professor Velkram said, his voice barely audible. That's more than I weigh. Lucy's pretty small for a strong woman, actually. Some of the bigger competitors can lift like 600 pounds or more. The faculty meeting dissolved into a chaos of chittering, bubbling, and various other species-specific sounds of existential dread. Dean Korvoth stood up, his massive form swaying slightly. "I believe," he said slowly, "that we need to contact the Galactic University administration immediately." "Is something wrong?" Maya asked, genuinely concerned. "Miss Singh," the dean said, "I'm beginning to suspect that our entire educational system may be fundamentally inadequate for your species." "Oh, don't worry about that," Maya said brightly. "Humans are pretty adaptable. We'll figure it out." That's when the emergency alarm started blaring. "Attention all personnel," the station's AI announced. "Structural integrity alert in Section 7. All non-essential personnel evacuate immediately." "What's happening?" Maya asked, looking around in confusion. Professor Vex Kazan checked his personal communicator and went very, very pale. "Miss Singh," he said slowly, "did you happen to touch anything in the dormitory this morning?" "Just the usual stuff." "Why?" "The structural alert is coming from your dormitory wing." Maya looked thoughtful. "Oh, that might be my fault. The shower handle was stuck this morning, so I had to give it a little extra twist to get the water working." The dean closed his eyes and began what sounded like a prayer in his native language. "Miss Singh," Professor Vex Kazan said carefully, "what exactly constitutes a little extra twist in human terms?" "I don't know, maybe like this much?" Maya demonstrated by gripping the edge of the conference table and applying what she clearly considered minimal pressure. The compressed titanium steel crumpled like paper. The faculty meeting ended with unprecedented speed as every alien in the room activated their emergency evacuation protocols simultaneously. As Maya stood alone in the empty conference room, surrounded by the wreckage of what had been considered indestructible furniture, she finally began to understand why everyone seemed so nervous around her. "Maybe," she said to herself, "I should have mentioned the thing about human strength earlier." Outside, Professor Vex Kazan was having what his species called a philosophical crisis while filing the most unusual incident report in the history of galactic education. Subject: Human Integration Protocols. Urgent revision required, he typed. Recommendation: rebuild everything, twice. As he submitted the report, he couldn't help but wonder what would happen when the rest of Maya's species decided to join the galactic community. The universe, he reflected, was about to become a much more interesting place, and probably a lot less structurally sound.